Diplomats' Archives, Hidden Stories. This is the 7th story. Today's story begins with a package from the Embassy of Paraguay in Seoul. Shall we open it? It's full of photos. We found descriptions written behind the photos. It says, Koreans who immigrated to Paraguay in the 1960s. The immigration of Koreans to Paraguay. When exactly did it begin? How did it happen? And why? To find the answer, we visited the Embassy of Paraguay to meet with the ambassador.
Paraguay and Korea established relations in 1962, and after that we also signed an agreement 3 years after, in 1965, to receive migrants from citizens from Korea to Paraguay.
As the ambassador just mentioned, the first Korean immigration to Paraguay began in 1965. At the time, the South Korean Ministry of Health and Social Affairs selected 95 people through an open recruitment for agricultural immigration. The group boarded the Bois Sauvin, which departed from Busan Port on February 17, 1965, and arrived at the port of Asuncion on April 22nd. And this year marks the 60th anniversary of the first Korean immigrants setting foot in Paraguay. But why did Korean immigration to Paraguay begin?
And that was because Korea had a war in 1950, the Korean War, and also Paraguay had two big wars. We had a war against Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. We lost a lot of territory after the war, and at that time we were about 800,000 inhabitants, and after the war there were only 200,000 inhabitants. About 600,000 people died. Not only soldiers, also men, women, children, everything. After that, we also had a war with Bolivia from 1932 to 1935. The Korean government had a policy to encourage migration because of the economic situation here in Korea after the war. And also Paraguay had a policy to receive migrants from all over the world in order to work the land. So both countries agreed and signed an agreement to receive Korean migrants at that time. Since there was a lot of land that were unoccupied, our government at that time encouraged migration. So we received migrants from Korea, from Japan, from Germany, from many other countries.
Paraguay is a landlocked country located in South America with a total area of approximately 406,752 square kilometers. This is about 4 times the size of South Korea. Population-wise, South Korea had around 25 million people, while Paraguay had around 1.88 million people in 1960, meaning South Korea's population was roughly 13 times that of Paraguay. At the time, Paraguay was in need of labor to cultivate its vast land, while many Koreans were likely seeking a new breakthrough after the war. To learn more about the Korean immigration to Paraguay at that time, we sought out an expert. Park Kye-young is a professor of anthropology and Asian American studies at UCLA. She has been conducting research with a particular interest in the field of immigration.
At the time, South Korea really was suffering from really widespread poverty, one of the poorest countries, and also high rate of unemployment and population pressure. I think there is also a pent-up desire to go abroad because before then, Koreans were not allowed to leave the country, like during the President Syngman Rhee's administration. And also, I would say that not really in order to make more money or whatever, but it was more truly kind of pioneering spirit, because I think a majority of these Korean immigrants, they came down from North Korea, so they were already refugees in South Korea. And actually, they developed a reputation that they were very successful actually entrepreneurs in South Korea. So they were like pushing forward. So I think that all contributed to immigration boom. And actually, it was a very competitive idea that like almost 6-1, 1 out of 6 was selected. So.
However, they were faced with much tougher conditions than anticipated. The initial group of 95 Korean agricultural immigrants mainly spread out and settled at farms such as Zukuru, Alto Parana, and San Pedro. However, according to the Korean immigrants at the time, the land was unsuitable for farming and settlement.
When we arrived at the farms, 25 hectares were allocated to each person. It was overwhelming and shocking. I couldn't find the words. We had no idea how we were supposed to farm on such land. It was literally a wasteland. Everyone hurriedly withdrew to Asuncion.
Korean immigrants in Paraguay, they were left in a like huge undeveloped land. They lacked farming background. They brought some tools, farming tools from Korea, but those tools are not appropriate, you see, because in South America, it was a capital-intensive farming. In Korea, it was a labor-intensive farming. So it's like you can use it, those tools. And also, they didn't have also capital because, although they were mostly middle class in Korea, they lived better than average Koreans. But at that time in the 60s, mid-60s, Korea was like foreign currency scarce. So it's like middle-class people, they left in empty hands, after paying whatever dues. And then also another thing is also very important and not known well to the public. They bought the land that the ownership was disputable. So they just couldn't stay.
At that time, there was also a lack of sufficient support policies from the Korean government to back up agricultural immigration to Paraguay.
Korean government at that time, they thought that they could emulate the way Japanese government did, but they didn't have any resources. Korea was at that time one of the poorest country. So, the Japanese government, they organized, they financed agricultural immigration at the beginning of 20th century, but I think Korean government couldn't do that. Also, Korean government, they couldn't offer adequate training, for agricultural immigration in South America. So I think that's.
The first-generation immigrants to Paraguay described the difficulties they faced in Paraguay as follows.
If we had stubbornly stayed at the Chucre farm until the end, we would all have perished. Settlement issues, marketing problems, lack of agricultural knowledge, everything was full of challenges. The only way to survive was to head for the city.
The Korean immigrants who found it difficult to make a living through farming started looking for ways to earn money. One of the methods they found was selling household goods they had brought from Korea one by one. That's how a new job called vendedor, or vende in short, was born. Vendedor comes from the Spanish word vender, which means to sell. But many Korean immigrants were referred to as vendedores, or sellers, as they went from door to door selling goods.
They started to sell what they brought. That is the only thing. And then they were impressed that local people, they loved it, okay, what they brought. They would visit each household, and because they didn't speak Spanish, so they clapped hands. Then people would come out. And they found the local Paraguayans to be very hospitable.
To better understand the situation of Koreans who immigrated to Paraguay at the time, we conducted a video interview with a second-generation Korean Paraguayan immigrant.
안녕하십니까. 저는 제 파라과이 한인회장 한인입니다.
Han In is a second-generation Korean Paraguayan immigrant who was born and raised in Paraguay. He has been leading the Korean Association in Paraguay since 2024.
저희 부모님들이랑 할아버지들은 맨 처음에 오셔갖고 밴드를 시작하셨다가 그리고 의류로 쭉 이어갔었어요. 초창기 때 교포들은 밴드를 많이 하셨고, 예, 그리고 조그만 슈퍼마켓 같은 것을 많이 했습니다. 전체가 다 한국 사업으로 뛰어갔다고 해도 과언이 아니라고 말씀드릴 수 있습니다.
We also had the opportunity to talk to another Korean immigrant from Paraguay.
저는 지금 현재 쇼핑 테라노바라고 미용 전문 그런 백화점을 하고 운영하고 있고요. 1977년 7월 4일 이게 한나이로 17살, 만으로는 15살에 부모님 따라 이민 나왔습니다.
Although he now runs a department store, Myung Se-bong also said that he worked as a vendedor for a while when he was young.
옷을 이제 옷가방 메고서는 이제 동네 들어가서 집집 돌아다니면서 옷을 팔고 그런 이제 외상으로 뭐 일주일에 얼마씩 해서 이제 다달이 이제 매주 방문해서 수금하고 옷 팔고 그런 행상이 그런 직업에 있었죠. 근데 저는 솔직히 밴드를 오래 안 해봤어요. 한 6개월만 하고서는 너무 어린 나이에 그때 시작해갖고서는 근데 그렇게 나가기 싫더라고. 그래서 막 화장실 들어가서 안 나온다고 울고 하고 막 그랬어요.
Vendedores were previously uncommon in Paraguay. In a way, we could say that a new profession was created by Korean immigrants.
그 당시에 그런 어려운 시기가 있었고 환경이 있었기 때문에 제가 거기서 많이 배웠고 세상을 많이 깨우쳤고 인간의 심리라든가 이런 기본적인 구조를 갖다가 많이 배우고 그걸 또 활용을 해서 제가 지금까지 위치에 온 거기 때문에 저는 고생이라고 생각 안 하고 그걸 일종의 아주 좋은 배움을 가졌었다. 그렇게 생각해요. 그런 게 없었으면은 지금의 제가 없었겠죠.
Many Koreans also opened new paths by running restaurants, grocery stores, and convenience stores in the cities, demonstrating their characteristic Korean diligence.
They were first came to work the land as farmers, but then they migrated into the urban areas. and they established businesses, all kinds of businesses. And they settled in areas that were common for us to go and do our shopping. So we became familiar with the Korean migrants very easily and very fast. Even me, myself, when I was a teenager, I also had many friends, Korean friends that were established. A lot of them spoke hardly any Spanish. And after a few years of stay, they learned very quickly. So that resembles the resilience of the Korean people. The thing is, when they went to Paraguay first, and they moved from the rural area to the urban areas, they established, let's say, for example, as grocery stores. And at that time, because of the hot weather we have in my country, everything closed from 12 to 3 p.m. And when they came, they moved into the cities, and they opened up stores, any kind of stores, and they never closed. So for us, it was very, very different. So they changed the mind of how Paraguayans worked and thought. So that was a big change for us, and it was a positive change.
It has been 60 years since Koreans first immigrated to Paraguay. However, through the interview with the president of the Korean Association, we learned that even in Paraguay, a distant country in South America, Koreans have made great efforts to preserve their ethnic identity.
정책성 바탕으로 언어라고 생각합니다. 저희 파라과이에 사는 교민들이 선구물로 선징한 특별한 학교가 있습니다.
This is the special school that the president of the Korean Association in Paraguay just mentioned. It's called the Korean School of Paraguay. The Korean School of Paraguay traces its origins back to a Saturday Korean language school that began in 1972. The language school started by renting classrooms at a local school to teach Korean every Saturday. As the number of students grew, so did the community's interest in Korean education. Later, the full-time formal institution known as the Korean School of Paraguay was officially established in 1992, after land was purchased with support from the Korean government and donations from the Korean community, and teachers were hired.
파라과이는 다른 나라에 비해서 브라질이나 아르헨티나에 비해서 정체성이 가장 강하다고 볼 수 있죠. 일단 한글 학교가 워낙에 잘 돼 있어서 교포 2세들 다 한국말을 잘하고 그런 점에서는 굉장히 좋은 것 같아요.
The Korean School of Paraguay is the first full-time educational institution in South America established through the joint efforts of the Korean immigrant community and the Korean government. Although it isn't officially recognized by Paraguay's education system, this school is an accredited elementary institution under Korea's Ministry of Education and offers the same curriculum as Korean elementary schools. It's not just a place to learn the Korean language. Moreover, this school is also a place where students can learn about Korean history and traditional culture, such as the fan dance, 사물놀이, and taekwondo. Students usually go to Paraguayan schools in the morning and come to the Korean School of Paraguay in the afternoon for additional classes.
주중에는 한국 학교라고 하고요. 토요일에는 한글 학교라고 합니다. 저도 그 학교 다녔고요. 그 학교 다닌 애들 중에서 좀 잘하는 편은 아니지만은 못하는 편이에요. 이 정도가. 예. 근데 그 학교를 저희 어르신들이 열심히 일을 하셔갖고 학교를 지고 한국에서도 좀 협조 받고 제가 알고 있는 것은 아마 해외에서 가장 좋은 한국 학교로 있는 것 같아요.
If we look at the statistics on Korean immigration to Paraguay between 1965 and 1985, we see that immigration first began in 1965, increased until 1976, then began to decline, before rising again in the mid-1980s.
현재 파라과이 교포들은 5,000명이고요. 여기서 지금 현재 훌륭한 검사, 그리고 회계사, 의사, 사업가들, 검사들, 인플루언서들이 있어갖고 한국 이상이 많이 높아졌습니다. 요즘 이제 대한민국이 K-팝, K-드라마, K-푸드이 많이 유명해지면서 저희가 많이 전체적으로 인정을 받게 되고 같이 잘 나누게 됐습니다.
Koreans and their descendants who have successfully settled in Paraguay after enduring difficult times in the past. Not only have they preserved their identity as Koreans, but they have also significantly contributed to raising the status of the Korean community in Paraguay from past to present. And this is one such person.
안녕하세요. 저는 파라과이에 사는 박시경입니다. Mi nombre es Yolanda Park. Yo soy nacida en Corea, pero viviendo en Paraguay desde el año 1982. Soy periodista de radio y de televisión ya con 23 años de antigüedad de los medios de comunicación de Paraguay.
Yolanda Park is one of Paraguay's most well-known and influential journalists. In 2002, she became the main host of the morning TV show La Mañana de Cada Día on Paraguay's private network SNT, a role she maintained for 17 years. She was the first Korean journalist to become a primetime anchor in Paraguay. She currently works as a TV host on Paraguay's public broadcaster Channel 13 and also hosts 2 radio shows every day. Her Korean name is Park Ji-kyung. In 1982, when she was just 2 years old, she arrived in Paraguay with her parents and 2 older sisters.
Nosotros somos del segundo grupo de emigrantes que vinimos a Paraguay en el año 1982. Cuando mi familia llegó a Paraguay, nosotros no vinimos directamente a Asunción. Fuimos a un lugar que está a unos 300 kilómetros de distancia, que era el bosque, el monte mismo. Trabajábamos la tierra y a partir de ahí, con ese esfuerzo y con ese trabajo, logramos llegar hasta Asunción para poder pagarnos el colegio, la universidad y todo el resto que implica a partir de ahí y lograr asentarnos en la comunidad. Entonces tenemos una comunidad que es denominada como muy trabajadora. La comunidad coreana es muy trabajadora, es muy resiliente y con mucha capacidad de levantarse. Y yo creo que ese es un gran ejemplo que ayuda a unir a ambos países porque el paraguayo también es así.
But how did she begin her career in the Paraguayan media industry?
Bueno, yo en realidad empecé en los medios de comunicación en Paraguay, en una radio en el año 2001, pero en la televisión sí, ya pude empezar en el año 2002 con una historia que seguramente ustedes conocen muy bien, porque el Mundial de Fútbol, el World Cup, fue en Corea. Entonces, en la televisión paraguaya estaban buscando personas que conozcan el coreano y que podamos traducir los materiales y los videos que llegaban en coreano. Así fue que me llamaron de un canal de televisión en el año 2002 y yo inicialmente llegué para traducir los materiales que estaban en coreano y después ya me quedé haciendo programas relacionados al Mundial y luego ya los noticieros.
In 2002, thanks to the World Cup held in Korea, Yolanda happened to step into the broadcasting world. Since then, with her natural talent and hard work, she rose to become an influential journalist in Paraguay, playing a major role in changing people's perception of Korean immigrants there.
Uno muchas veces suele tener percepciones equivocadas con relación a ciertas nacionalidades o comunidades. Antes, la percepción que existía sobre el coreano en Paraguay es que el coreano puede atender despensas, almacenes, supermercados, pero estoy segura que es porque nuestros mayores no tuvieron la oportunidad de estudiar en Paraguay o de formarse en Paraguay como yo sí ya lo pude hacer. Entonces creo que a partir de mi aparición y de otras personas también en televisión es como que se abrió mucho el pensamiento de la comunidad paraguaya con relación a los coreanos. El coreano no solamente puede tener un supermercado, sino que también puede hacer otras cosas, puede tener otro tipo de profesiones y fuimos mucho más valorados, respetados y con más oportunidades a través de esa puertita que se abrió.
She also works closely with the Korean Association of Paraguay and the Embassy of Korea in Paraguay, playing a vital role as a civil diplomat connecting Korea and Paraguay. If more civilian diplomats like Yolanda Park step forward, couldn't the relationship between Korea and Paraguay grow even stronger?
Yo creo que la relación entre Paraguay y Corea puede crecer muchísimo más, tanto lo que Corea puede ayudar a Paraguay como lo que Paraguay puede ayudar a Corea. Estamos todavía muy lejos de ustedes en el tema tecnología, por ejemplo. Yo creo que ustedes nos pueden ayudar muchísimo con eso, pero yo creo que lo que Paraguay tiene todavía, en Paraguay hay mucho campo, hay mucha tierra para trabajar, hay mucha agricultura, ganadería, que yo sé que es lo que ustedes no tienen y es lo que a ustedes les falta. Entonces, creo que podemos compenetrarnos muy bien en lo que nosotros necesitamos y ustedes pueden ayudar y viceversa.
And here in Korea, there's another civilian diplomat who connects Korea and Paraguay through art.
예, 안녕하세요. 반갑습니다. 예, 항공실진원에 오신 걸 환영합니다.
Artist Kim Soo-nok. Not only is she an artist, she also runs the Korea Arts Promotion Agency, promoting Korean art to the world now. And she's also closely related to Paraguay. Shall we listen to her story?
1983년도에 저희 아버지께서 먼저 파라과이에 가셨어요. 파라과이에 가시게 된 거는 원래 파라과이에 사시려고 가신 게 아니라 그 당시에 브라질에서 이민을 안 받아줬어요. 농업 이민을 1963년도부터 받아들이다가 68년부터 차단됐거든요. 왜냐하면 농업 이민을 받아들였는데 농업을 하지 않으니까 이민길이 막혀서 파라과이를 통해서 가시려고 했는데 파라과이에 가셔서 추석을 밟는 동안에 파라과이가 너무 좋으셨대요. 그리고 거기서 정착을 하시게 되면서 처음에 갔을 때 가장 놀란 거는 공기가 너무 깨끗하고 좋았어요. 마치 산소호흡기를 댄 것처럼 가슴이 뻥 뚫리고 숨이 제대로 쉬어지는데 그리고 사람들이 많이 웃고 낙천적으로 행복지수가 상당히 높아 보였습니다.
After moving to Paraguay and living in South America, she encountered something that had a profound impact on her life as a painter. The Iguazu Falls.
또 파라과이가 이가수 폭포가 또 근접해 있는 곳이기 때문에 많이 갈 수가 있었고 그리고 작품에 대한 그 영감을 뭐라고 말로 표현할 수 없을 정도로 그 아름다움과 또 에너지 또 멈추지 않는 생명의 소리같이 느껴졌고요. 영원한 저희 작품 테마로 충분하다는 판단이 들었습니다. 그래서 이가수 폭포에 매료돼서 정말 많은 작품을 그렸습니다.
After being deeply inspired by the Iguazu Falls, she began to paint several paintings based on the subject. As you can see from the paintings hanging here, her painting style has evolved into various styles over time.
그래서 제 화실을 보면은 전통적인 한국적인 작품하고 또 이가수 폭포 그림이 있으면서 잠시 정체성의 혼란기가 있었어요. 마치 두 가지 음악이 충돌하는 것 같기도 하고 나중에 생각해 보니까는 두 가지를 다 할 수 있다는 것도 대단히 저한테는 큰 행운이구나. 저는 파라과이는 제 2의 고향이고 저는 뿌리는 한국에 내리지만 가지는 멀리 세계적으로 치고 싶은 생각이 있기 때문에 더 많은 걸 받아들이고 그리고 표현할 수 있는 것을 다양하게 지금도 많이 하고 싶습니다.
Her works are held in various institutions, including Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the National Assembly, the UN headquarters in the US, and the Paraguayan presidential residence. Kim Soo-nok is promoting Korea in Paraguay and Paraguay in Korea. Yet her paintings themed around the Iguazu Falls are loved by people of both countries, transcending national boundaries. We met many Korean immigrants to Paraguay through this episode. And we discovered that everyone we met calls Paraguay their second home. Perhaps for that reason, we could also feel their sincere desire to give back to Paraguay that had warmly welcomed them with open arms.
제가 이제 하고 있는 일 중에서 하나인데 교도소에서 가장 형이 많은 사람들한테 제사회화 할 수 있도록 제가 공장을 차리고 그 안에서 기술과 급여랑 사대보험을 지금 해드리고 있습니다. 사회의 큰 변화를 위해서 저희가 봉사하는 마음으로 그렇게 하고 있습니다. 거기 안에서 시설을 준비하고 한 사람 한 사람 교육을 시키고 기술을 익히고 월급을 주면서 사대보험까지 본인 식구들한테 의료 혜택이나 그리고 본인들이 앞으로 나왔을 때 은퇴할 수 있는 그 기회를 주고 있습니다.
This week on Diplomats' Archives Hidden Stories, we explored the journey of the first Koreans who crossed into Paraguay 60 years ago. Though they faced many hardships in a foreign land, Korean immigrants did not back down. Instead, they took charge of their own paths and carved out a future for themselves.
Korea plays a big role in Paraguay's contemporary history, and that is also reflected in our bilateral relations, right? I say like we have a big, strong foundation with the Koreans established in Paraguay, and also with the culture that they exported or brought into Paraguay. And also our bilateral relations is established with a big foundation, which is the cultural fact, and also the pillars that glued together by trade and commerce.
As we mark the 60th anniversary of Korean immigration to Paraguay this year, we hope more people will come to know this special history shared between the two nations, so that Korea and Paraguay can grow even closer, and that this history can become a stepping stone for a new chapter in their relationship.